So, hi everybody, good evening. I will show you this again. So, this is my book. It's called Navigating Without Instruments, and it was published by the publishing group called The Accomplices, and specifically my main publisher, Redress Press. And they're sort of an independent conglomerate, and they're based in different parts of the country. But their hearts are definitely, many of them, in LA. And I worked on this book for a frighteningly long time, and I ran away from it many, many times over 8 years. And finally, it was released in December. So this is still of my first readings, with the book. And so I really additionally appreciate this space to kind of, work through how I'm talking about the book and what I'm sharing. There are many, many threads in the book. There are different anchors. And so I thought I would just start at the very beginning. And I will show you this very first page. I don't know if you can see it, but basically it just begins. Warning, a book of poetry is a trigger. Warning, a book of poetry is a trigger. Warning, a book of poetry is a trigger warning. A book of poetry is a trigger warning. A book of poetry is a trigger warning. A book of poetry is a trigger. And throughout the book, there are these icons. And these icons come from Army and Air Force survival guides from the 40s and 50s. And for whatever reason, when I first started seeing military survival guides, I have a deep fascination with them. And so I collect them. And one in particular, let me see if I can grab it. This one had these amazing icons in them. And what they are, they're these panels basically where the idea is if you are stranded with your plane somewhere, you would fold them. It's almost like origami where you have these big, huge pieces of paper and they're blue and yellow. And depending on the folds, it will have a message. So this was the first one, and it's called Have Abandoned Plane, Walking in This Direction. So I'm just going to start with the first two pieces. Oh, let me put my timer on. Remember all the children whom were never born to me. The little raspy voice one who can name all the presidents. The big-haired one with a smile that screams for revolution and popsicles. The squeaky retort and gentlefoot one I saw sitting there at the beach. Every little one I see while sitting anywhere at every awful beach. Versions of a future, a given back in my 20s. All the while I said my window was closing, but I still knew I had time. This was supposed to happen after all or any of them, especially the ones who came to me in my dreams. The curly-haired cutie pie who rounded the corner off the hallway to up and fly into my arms. I still catch him sometimes while standing here frozen in my kitchen. Or the goofball who tapped me on the forehead too early in the morning, begging for waffles and presents. I still see them, even after the decorations are taken down. They construct the perfect, imperfect child, some tiny one I imagined would be both of my body and dropped off at my door at their age of 2. Ready to go, ready to walk, ready to use the toilet on their own. My fantasies don't need to struggle. That little one who would frustrate me, send me to fits, challenge me to the point of knowing I was getting mine. The growing one who would be aging alongside me. Feels like they should be, would have been here by now. Redream. Curly-haired cutie pie. He was a little he. Big curly hair, mixed blood of my blood or not. Maybe 4 or 5 when he sped down the hall around the corner of the kitchen, open arms toward me, running jump to fly into a future memory passed right by me. That is all I know. Or is it all I can remember? But he was mine as much as any little one could be. Maybe there was more to recall. He had a big laugh like mine and a grand smile. As he grew older and older, he became queerer and queerer, bigger and tougher, and he determined to keep his smile. And we never warred, and we always debated, and we spent less time together, and we loved each other like I could never love any other. Or is that just what is said happens when a child enters into your life to blossom your adulthood? Of course. Well, of course. And one day, he went to a grave and placed a single cymbidium on a patch of land no one else was left to care to visit. He planted a joke into the earth underneath his knees and swore to the birch tree above his head that the grounds of the cemetery shook because of the chattering set of teeth buried below. That is my mother cracking up, he said. I swear I can hear her laugh penetrate the wind. Then he rose to his feet and left me alone again. Note to community. Thank you. Please do not assume so much of the person walking this earth at this time without child, that there has been a simple path of deciding against adopting or bearing child, even when you meet them at the moment of being at peace with not adopting or bearing child, that there hasn't been loss, contemplation, depletion, letting go, debate, fighting with self or partner, that there has only been loss, depletion, fighting with self or partner, that there hasn't been the extreme depths of unbelievable joy, passion, peace, exploration, creation, that there hasn't been birthing. Instead, invite us in. We can be revolutionary aunties and radical siblings, and you could probably use the support. Note to reader, write a letter to your future great-great-grandchild, whether real or imaginary, whether you ever wanted a child or not. The letter must include 3 questions to yourself, then to the child. Mail it to someone you trust, or read it aloud once, then bury it. So throughout the book, thank you so much. There are poetics, a lot of prose poetry, notes to self, notes to community, notes to the world, what I call micro essays, sometimes in the form of those notes to self. And I guess I travel through a lot of different moments in memory. And one thing that I realized while I was working on a play called Tales of Clamor, I was trying to figure out what my character's principal, like, motivating force was. She's this strident activist, a version of that of me, I guess. And I realized in sort of going through the process of addressing my particular story in that narrative, that my grandfather appears a lot. My grandpa appears a lot in my memory, even though I only have official memories up to the time I was 4 when he died. And, but maybe that's also why I think he's such a motivating force in my life, because of understanding more as I grow older what his life was. So going through that process helped me to sort of write certain parts of this book, and writing this book also helped me to write that play. So I wanted to share a little bit about my grandfather. Okay. I think I'll read this piece. It's called No Redress. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with World War II, American concentration camps, and not to be confused with Nazi death camps or extermination camps. And these were places that were, my family, both my kato and my kiriyama side, were put during the war for being Japanese, of Japanese ancestry. And there was a redress movement. There were reparations that were fought for. And I am involved now in reparations work for folks today and for like the future of our country, I think. And so my grandfather died in 1978, and that was 10 years before the Civil Liberties Act of 1988. And so I don't think he even knew that people were trying to fight to reckon with that time. So this is dedicated to all the ancestors who died before knowing that redress and reparations would be a thing to come or to be fought for in the future that we call now. No redress, no museum, no monument, no poem, no song can house the spirit of a past soul like that of my grandfather, who died before justice could meet the old man at his mailbox. Grandpa never got to stand in line at the bank, 3 inches taller, with redress check in hand, 1 foot in front of the other, feeling grounded again. Never got to deposit an apology in his savings account. Never got to wonder of how he might spend this money on new equipment for the nursery, or a truck for himself, or college money for his grandchildren, or for once, take the most takai cuts from the fish truck man. Most years in April, I attend pilgrimage. I say, hello, Manzanar. I bow at the graves. I speak to the wind of my hopes for afterlife to be a real thing. Not so I can see Grandpa again, but for him to look around today, jump into the circle, dance the tankobushi and watch me get it right, and see our friends, all our relations, learn what we mean by chosen family. We're here, not only to remember, but to remind the local docents this place will never be a museum. This body will never forget. And we leave pilgrimage with pledges as concrete as the monument. We sing songs to keep each other awake on the long ride home. We lose sight quickly. Rearview mirrors, a pitch black sky, where they close the gate at the hour they have had enough of us, where we leave behind parts of our best poetry, where I hope not, but think Grandpa sits still, waiting. So yeah, throughout, thank you. Yeah, I just realized also, like I have always craved stories about my grandfather, and they're not always the best stories. And I'm always trying to wait for some story of justice and happiness. And I finally found one. And so we come to that later in the book. But why don't we jump to another theme completely, because we don't have much time here. So I've been thinking a lot about, surviving and survival, and, what it means to have certain things happen prematurely, so to speak, to my body, for health reasons and things like that. And I was reflecting on how at the beginning of this year, I reached my 5-year mark since being free of cancer. And so, I've just been thinking about that. Like, I know that that's a milestone, but it does make me think about how my goal, I don't know if it can be a goal, but my goal had always been to live to 102, because my bachan, my dad's mom, made it to 102. And I recently got to spend a little bit of time with Yuri Kochiyama's daughter, Adi. And as I was walking away from Adi's house, I thought, you know what? It'd be such an honor to live to 93, to make it as long as Yuri did. And I thought, oh, wait, what happened to my plan of 102? When did I go back on that? And so I've just been thinking about that the past few days. So I want to read something from the day of diagnosis, actually. in 2016. If that's okay, I think I'll do that. Okay. Week of diagnosis, day 1. The things a doctor should never say. A doctor really shouldn't do what she did. A doctor should enter the room calmly. A doctor should stay in the room once she's opened my file, instead of rushing in and out. A doctor should look like she knows, a doctor should look like she knows what she's doing, if only for the sake of the patient and the patient's partner, who is now frozen in place because the doctor can't just say the word. A doctor should not begin by saying, "This is so hard. I don't know how to say this. You're so young." A doctor should begin with, "I don't want you to worry. You will be fine. There is amazing technology now, and we will fight this so hard, it will never come back." I take Joycey's hand and tell her not to worry. I look my doctor in the eye and say, "It's okay. Just say it." If anything, a doctor should just say it. Because I can't. Not yet. The doctor must go first. So it's one of those weird things, right? Like diagnoses and the communication of that. And, by the, I don't know, I went into I'm an organizer and an activist. So I went into organizing mode and, thinking about my resources and my plan. But my partner Joyce was not ready to think about those things. She was just still trying to understand what was happening. And by the end of that day, I was already starting to make cancer jokes, and which is only okay, right? I think between someone with it and someone who's had it, and oh, she got so mad at me. But it's okay, we got through it. All right, let's check time. Let's see. Do I have a little bit more time?
Yes.
Okay. So, LA is where I've been, and it's where I'm raised. I'm a 3rd generation Los Angelino, and I appreciate, Phil, that you shared the LA poem, and it's something that is dear to me. And I was just in the Bay Area, and I had a conversation with my hosts, and I told them that I had written that particular LA piece as a reaction to having so many arguments about LA, specifically with Bay Area people. Because Bay Area people love to hate on LA sometimes, and I find it really interesting. But I'm gonna actually read a newer piece. Since you mentioned Little Tokyo, I have an organization called Tuesday Night Project, and we have something called Tuesday Night Cafe. We started in February of 1999. It's on the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays, April through October. We did virtual programming, not TNCs online, but different kinds of programs during the pandemic. And we're going to try to come back in May through a hybrid program, so you can watch it online. But we've live streamed. We live streamed actually for several years, way before the pandemic, just as a way to be accessible. So you can check it out. We're going to come back in May. So I wanted to read this. It's called The Invisible Capes of Little Tokyo. You've seen them, but you may be distracted by the obvious. The kids in cosplay. Attire in homage to beloved characters of the manga world. They come to Little Tokyo to feel free to be their inner anime spirit. Some in homespun costume with cardboard staff and older sibling graduation gown. Others heed to $400 corset with tulle petticoat and platform Mary Janes. I watch the tourists request photos with the best dressed. It is not Halloween. This is any day of the week. No anime convention necessary. The intersection is complex, a safe haven for the misfits of other parts of the city. and a year-round, open season Japanophile fantasy land. But the richest scene comes when I stop and consider the less seen, my main attraction, the J-Town OGs, the Little Tokyo superheroes, the ordinary extraordinary, who carry my history in their pockets and memories of when their attendance was undeterred by the dismal numbers roaming about past 6 p.m. I swear I see it all the time. The ghosts of J-Town past high-fiving the Little Tokyo pros of the present. The ones with shooting stars in the shape of 2 tennis balls guiding the front of a walker. The Nisei volunteers walking back to the museum with seed packets from Onsen Hardware and pride more complicated than war. The 70-something community organizer with a stack of meetings on her shoulders, the weight of battle at her ankles, and "I don't give a fuck" written all over her face. The young bloods building pipelines along 2nd Street, entry points on Judge John Iso, bridges this side of the towers for the next generation of youth, and the next, and the next. Around their necks, they wear invisible capes the size of parachutes, armed with staff and sword in the form of plastic file carriers from Daiso, and treasure maps of the 4x6 cardstock kind, donning satchels of bokashi compost and elixir of sake or espresso, walking the cultural spine through pumpkin patches, hanging with the wolves, cranes, and kings who share their loot with the whole lot. The next time you're in Little Tokyo, walk down 1st Street, turn your head, look up, an invisible cape. Another one just passed you by. So if you're not familiar with Little Tokyo, let me know, and you want to come see TNC, and I'll host you in our little corner of the courtyard, and I'll start to point to you the references that were made in this piece. And there's a lot of love. If I can just finish, I'm going to read one last one. I'm going to read one that I did for both my dad and my partner, since I brought up Joycey. You know, I was looking through my manuscript at one point, and I was just like, oh my God, sad, mad, sad, 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 mad, 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 sad, 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 sad. And I was like, I need to, you know, include the joy, even if that's something I have to imagine and muster up. So this is maybe one of those. Where we would have gone. And then there were those who said, it was best I didn't come out to you before you died. Your generation, being the rusty, sunken treasure chest that it is, or so they'd say. But I insist on my ability to predict the past. It would have happened in July. Your dying wish that final year you knew wasn't yours. A trip with all the grandkids, aunties, uncles, cousins, calabash, and by blood. All aboard the biggest ship for the cheapest price. A floating island of humans midsummer, the worst combination for sanity. I would have waived my right to a vote, packed my trepidations, and prepared for an entirely new way of breathing. All eyes would be on the space between you and my girlfriend. But despite all assumptions, you would be just fine. Because the summer before, sitting down for lunch that should have been hamburgers or tacos or anything you wanted, me hunched underneath another failed relationship. The warning of others I'd made the wrong choice. Again, there I was, trying to defend, promise I will be fine. I promise I know what I'm doing. All you knew was to leap from your chair, forget the pockmarked liver tethering you to your seat, put your hand on my shoulder, make everyone else turn to vapor, say one thing to me. You okay, kid? I just want you to be okay. And it would happen on the deck of a ship at the end of 2 behemoth weeks. Enough time for you to witness Joycey being to you the way she is with the rest of the world. I would pretend never to catch you catching this. And come the sunset of our trip, after wave upon wave of sticky toddlers, sopping wet miniature cargo shorts, stomping alongside sloppy drunk men children, expertise gained of every open bar available before 3 p.m., and the mastering of overwhelm by every buffet. The better part of me slumped in my designated chaise lounge, barely the gumption to lift my neck in time to see you, standing at the edge of the deck, pressing your midsection against the rail, pretending you didn't need painkillers. Joycey would walk over, ask, "How you doing, George?" You would put your hand on her shoulder. "I'm okay, kid. I'm doing okay." And there would never be a better thing said, never a better time had. Thank you so much for this time, y'all. It's really meaningful to be able to share this, even in this virtual space. So thank you so much. Back to you, Phil.